Okay, so we are going to go over the study guide right now. Um, the first page is pretty straightforward. You just have to know that the exponential function is in the form y is equal to a times b to the x. Remember that a is your y-intercept, b is your multiplier, and if the multiplier is greater than 1, then we have exponential growth. And then if the multiplier is between 0 and 1, it is going to be exponential decay. So you guys should try these problems first before you look at what I do. But I'm just going to go ahead and put the answers here and explain how to get them. Remember, so for A, the first number is always the y-intercept. So that's going to be 4. Your multiplier is always going to be what's attached to the x, so it's 1/3. And because your multiplier is 1/3, remember 1/3 is less than 1, so I know that this is going to be decay. So for letter B, the y-intercept is 3, the multiplier is 5, and then this is going to be growth because your multiplier is more than 1. Once again, if the multiplier is more than 1, it's growth. So for letter C, I know my y-intercept is 1/2. I know my multiplier is just 1.5. And then since my multiplier is greater than 1, this is going to be growth. For letter D, my y-intercept is 4. My multiplier is 0.2. So here, my multiplier is less than 1. So I know this is going to be decay. Remember, if it's a decimal, like if it's a decimal, like 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, that's less than 1. Okay, E and F, a lot of you got wrong on your homework for this situation, or for this type of problem. For E, you only see one number. Some of you got confused if that's your A or your B. Well, look up here. Whatever's attached to your X is your B. So 1/2 is your multiplier. If there's no number out in front, your y-intercept is going to be 1. And then here, your multiplier is 1/2. Okay? And then once again, since the multiplier is less than 1, remember 1/2 is less than 1, this is going to be decay. So once again, for here, you have no number. You only have one number, but that's the b because that's attached to the x. So your y-intercept here is 1, okay? And then your multiplier here is 2. And then since your multiplier is greater than 1, this is going to be growth. So y-intercept here should be 1/4. Your multiplier will be 1/3. Sorry, 4/3. Okay, now this is where some of you also got confused on the homework. 4/3 is an improper fraction. This means this is greater than 1. So this is going to be growth. Some people automatically think when they see a fraction, it's going to be decay. That's not the case. Here, the fraction is more than 1, so it's going to be growth. So here, your y-intercept is 3. Your multiplier is 0.7. And so once again, since your multiplier is less than 1, this is going to be decay. Okay. This is really simple. Please do not get these wrong. Okay. So let's go on, let's move on here. So number 2 is kind of what we did in Friday's lecture. The 400 bungalows have a roach infestation. Compare the following classrooms to find out who will have the most roaches after 7 days. So remember, what you're going to be asked to do is you're going to be asked to write an equation for each classroom. Once again, you're going to need two things. You're going to need the y-intercept, and you're going to need the multiplier. Okay. So remember that for the table, the y-intercept is really easy to find. Whenever x is 0, that's your y-intercept. Okay? But now you need to also take into account what the multiplier is. So here, you see that I'm going from 3 to 9, 9 to 27, 27 to 81. My multiplier is I'm multiplying by 3. Okay? So once again here, your y-intercept is 3, your multiplier is 3. Now let's look at Mr. Wydra's room. So here, remember the y-intercept is wherever the graph crosses the y-axis. So my y-intercept here is 2. And then remember, how do I find the multiplier? Well, if this is 2, let's go to where x is equal to 1. So that's right here, x is equal to 1. Right? And we're going to go and see what the y value is right there, where it meets the graph. Okay? And so if I look here, this is 8, because on the left, look at the numbers. It goes from 0 to 10 to 20 to 30. So that means each little line goes up by 2. So this is going to be 8. And then I go to where x is equal to 2, which is right here, right? I go up to here. And I see the y value here is 32. So it goes from 2 to 8 to 32. So what am I multiplying by? 4. Okay. And then for Mr. Anzac, it's really easy. Your y-intercept is 5. And then your multiplier is 2. Okay. So now, number 1 says, write an equation for each classroom. Okay, that should be pretty straightforward once you have your y-intercept and your multiplier. So Mr. Gunderson should be y is equal to 3 times so it's y is equal to 3 times 3 to the x. Mr. Wydra, he should be y is equal to 2 times 4 to the x. And then Mr. Anzac, he'll be the equation's already written, so you could just go ahead and copy it. That's it. So who started with the most roaches? You look at the y-intercept. The one with the highest y-intercept is Mr. Anzac, because he started with 5 roaches. Who started with the least roaches? That's Mr. Wydra. He only started with 2. Whose classroom are the roaches growing the fastest? Well, we look at the multiplier, and the one with the greatest multiplier is Mr. Wydra. He has a multiplier of 4. And whose classroom are the roaches growing the slowest? We look at the lowest multiplier, and that would be Mr. Anzac. Okay. Now, number 6, what we're going to do is we need to find out how many roaches are in each classroom after 7 days. So what you're going to do is you're going to take these 3 equations and plug in 7 for x. Okay. So go ahead and try to do that, and then I'm going to tell you what the answers are. Okay, so for Mr. Gunderson, you should have got 6,561 roaches. Okay. For Mr. Wydra, you should have got 32,768 roaches. And then Mr. Anzac, you should have got 640 roaches. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next problem now. So Mrs. Holt's daughter wants the bounciest ball for her birthday. Mrs. Holt doesn't want to let her daughter down. So this is exactly like the problem you saw in the homework or in the notes. And then you have three different supermarkets, and you want to know what is the equation for each. So once again, for the table, it's always easy to find the y-intercept. It's right here. So I know my y-intercept is going to be 81. And then now your multiplier, what's happening here? Well, 81 to 27, 27 to 9, I know I'm dividing by 3. But remember, we're talking about multiplier here. So instead of going dividing by 3, my multiplier is actually 1/3. Because what you're talking about is what do I multiply 81 to get 27? So you can't say divide by 3. That's not a multiplier. Remember, dividing by 3 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. Okay? So now let's do Island Pacific. Island Pacific, my y-intercept is 64. And then now we're going to go ahead and look at where, so this is x is equal to 1 right here. So I'm going to go to the graph and see that it's 32. I'm going to go to the graph here, and I see it's 16. And then I'm going to go to the graph here, and I see that it's 8. So it goes from 64 to 32 to 16 to 8. So I divide by 2. But remember, your multiplier is not 2, it's 1/2. And then here, this one's pretty easy. The y-intercept is 256. And your multiplier is 1/4. Okay, so now that we have all of this information, we could go ahead and write our equations. So here should be y is equal to 81, 1/3 to the x. Oops. Okay. Island Pacific, it's going to be y is equal to 64 times 1/2 to the x. Okay. And then this is going to be y is equal to 256 times 1/4 to the x. Okay. So those are your equations. So number 2, which ball was bounced from the highest height? So that's where it started. The y-intercept here is 81, here is 64, here's 256. Okay. Then, which ball was bounced from the lowest height? You're going to look at the lowest number. Okay, now number 4, some of you still get confused here when it's going down. Which ball decreases in height the fastest? Well, that's the one. If you think about it, I know to think of it as a multiplier is difficult, right? But look at how the numbers go down. 81 to 27 to 9 to 3, I'm dividing by 3. 64 to 32 to 16 to 8. And then if I multiply, this is actually dividing by 4, right? So here I'm dividing by 3. Here I'm dividing by 2. Here I'm dividing by 4. So the one that's going to decrease the height the fastest is the one that's dividing by 4. Because if you're dividing by a bigger number, right, then you end up with, you end up getting smaller numbers. Just think about this. 20 divided by 10 is 2. That's a small number. But if I divide 20 by 2, I get 10. That's a big number. So the bigger number you divide by, the smaller your answer is. So the ball that decreases in height the fastest is 1/4 because I'm dividing by 4. And the ball that decreases in height the slowest is 1/2. Okay. And then now, which ball will have the lowest height after 5 bounces? So once again, you're going to use these formulas and you're going to plug 5 into x. You could round your answer. Okay. So the first one, make sure you guys know how to use your calculator. So this is going to be, I'm putting in 5 for x. So this is going to be 0.333. Okay. Island Pacific is going to be 64 times 1/2 to the 5th power. And so this is going to be 2. And then this, I'm going to put 256 times 1/4 taken to the 5th power. And this is 0.25. Okay. So if you don't know what to do on your phone calculator, I'm going to put right here what you put in. So for example, for Food for Less, you put 81, then you're going to put the divided by, and then you would put the parentheses and put 1 divided by 3. You are going to close the parentheses. You're going to press that X to the Y button. You're going to press 5, and then you're going to press equals. And that's how you should get those answers. We kind of went over it in the past 2 lectures. Hopefully you remember. Which ball would you recommend her to buy? Well, you want the one that's going to be the bounciest. So after 5 bounces, the one that's still at the highest height is Island Pacific. So that would be your answer here. Now, number 6 is just more practice. And for some reason, some of the graphs didn't appear here. That's interesting. But let's go ahead and do the 2 graphs that did appear. So No. Okay. So actually, don't worry about number 6. Um, I won't. I won't really put it on the quiz. Okay. Make sure you know how to do everything else. Now, scroll down to number 7. So this is what we did yesterday. A population of invasive feral pigs is introduced to the island of Kohilant. It started with a population of 50 pigs in the year 2020. If the population of feral pigs increases by 6% per year, what is the predicted feral pig population in the year 2030? Now, remember that if we're doing exponential growth, right, or percent growth, it is going to look like this. Y is equal to A times 1 plus R to the X. This is percent growth. And remember, if you're doing percent decay, it's really Y is equal to A 1 minus R to the X. Okay? So using that, for number 7, I know this is growth since it says the population increases. So remember, all you have to do here is just do Y is equal to, it started with 50, and it increases by 6%. So it's just going to be 1 plus 0.06 to the X. Okay? And then so it's going to turn out to be Y is equal to 50, 1 plus 0.06, no, sorry, 1.06 to the X. And then that's your equation. Now you want to know what's the population in the year 2030. Well, if I start measuring at 2020 and then it ends up in the year 2030, how many years have passed between them? That's 10 years, right? So this is going to be Y is equal to 50 times 1.06 to the 10th, and that is how you solve, that's how you get the predicted population. So now you just go ahead and put that into your calculator. And so you get, you put, that. And so I get that there will be, if I round it, because this is number of pigs, you should get something like 89.5423, so on, so on. So I'm just going to round that to 90 pigs. Okay, any question on that? Okay. I mean, if you have questions on that, please watch that problem done again. It's pretty straightforward. So number 8, there are 48,000 black-eyed leaf frogs in Central America presently. There is an infectious fungal disease that is decreasing the population by 8.2% per year. How many black-eyed leaf frogs are there expected to be after 15 years? So now the population is decreasing. So I'm going to use your decay, where it's just the same thing, but it's subtraction. So I'm going to start with doing Y is equal to 48,000. And then this is going to be 1 minus 0.082. Remember, to change this to a decimal, we move that decimal 2 times to the left. So it's 0.082 to the X. Okay. And then now we just simplify it. You could do 1 minus 0.082 on your calculator, and you get 0.918. And so that's your equation. And then so we want to know what it's going to be after 15 years. So it's just going to be 48,000, 0.918 to the 15th. And then, so I get that after 15 years, there is expected to be 13,301 frogs. You should have got something like 13300.913079, something like that, but you could just round it. Okay. And so number 9 and number 10 are exactly like number 7 and number 8. For number 9, you would write your equation. So there's a Wild Wild West small town with a population of 250. So we start with 250. And then the population of the town exploded. It increases by 20% per month. Remember, if you move that decimal 2 times to the left, this becomes 0.20 now, right? And then so this is going to be y is equal to 250, 1.20 taken to the x power. And then we want to know how many people are going to be in the town after 11 months. So this is going to be 1.20 to the 11th power. And then so I get that this is going to be 1,858 people. Okay. I rounded to the nearest one since this is persons. You can't have 0.5 of a person, right? Okay. Last one, the number of reported cases of the rare X virus is supposed to decay by 30% per year. If the number of reported cases of X virus in the year 2020 are 1,200,000 cases, how many cases are expected in the year 2026? So I know my equation. This time I'm going down because it says decay. So if I start with 1, 2, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and this is going to be 1 minus 0.30 to the x. So it ends up being y is equal to 12, 120. One more. Okay. And so this should be 0.70 to the x. And then if I start measuring in the year 2020 and I want to know how many are in the year 2026, that's a 6-year difference. So I'm going to use six for my x. And then if I go ahead and do this on the calculator, I get that there should only be 141 and 179 cases after rounding. Okay. So there's only really a couple of things that you really need to study. This, how to write an equation from a table graph and analyze it. And then you need to do this simple identification. And that's all your quiz is going to be about. Okay.